numbers came from Over the Cap over the weekend, the post-June 1st cap space in the NFL. The Lions have $40.3 million. That is the third most of any team in the National Football League, which is kind of surprising because we're talking about one of the better rosters in the NFL right now. We're talking about a team that just signed massive contracts, although it's clear that that money is somewhat backloaded. The next 2 seasons, they are going to have some cap flexibility. And $40.3 million is quite a bit. Now, you want a rainy day fund. You want to be ready to make a move if necessary, if something happens that really depletes your roster. But you also want to win a Super Bowl. And it strikes me that with free agents like Justin Simmons and players available like maybe T. Higgins, a safety or a wide receiver, there are guys up front defensively that are available. It all makes sense. Do you jump back into free agency now and get maybe that 1-year contract for a player who is looking for a longer deal? Do you go big and sign somebody and figure out the cap stuff later? Do you save all this money with the idea that at the trade deadline you can take in a ton of salary and at that point know maybe a little bit more in particular specifics what you will need? What is the best use of this flexibility that Brad Holmes has created for himself?
Well, I think you have to use some of it. Otherwise, it's just wasted. And then you would go back and say, well, why didn't they do this in free agency? Why didn't they do that in free agency?
Yep.
So, yeah, there's still ways to – you can always improve your roster. But at this point, it seems like if you're going to do it, it's going to be free agent route, and it's going to be a 1-year deal for free agents, right?
Yeah.
So you can still go out, and there's still some big-time free agents you can bring in if you want to. Are you waiting for some cap casualties to come down the road in August?
Yeah, I mean, $40 million's a couple of players.
Yeah,
good ones.
Not huge, right?
Yeah.
So I would imagine that just gauging Brad Holmes, he's got a plan. I think he's got a plan. Now, I think the very bottom rung of that plan is that they're fine where they're at. They could go into the season right now, compete for a Super Bowl right now. However, if the player comes along and they think puts them over the top, they can go out and get them and spend on it. Now, do they want to do that through a trade? I don't know if they want to do that through a trade because that's talking about trading away other assets that like draft picks and I don't know if that's the route they want to go, but they certainly have the money to do it from a standpoint of free agency, and that's why if you see somebody get released in early August, that maybe that player comes over here real quickly because, the Lions can give me a 1-year, $10 million contract, and then they only have $30 million left in cap space.
Right. I guess the one thing, I'll start with this, and I just, do this a lot. I can't believe that we're that team. I am so used to seeing other teams and being so jealous of those other teams for being good and having cap space. Like, how'd you pull that off? How'd you pull that off? I'm so used to being bad and having no cap space.
Right.
And now they're good and have cap space.
But this is the 1-year window they have because obviously things change dramatically when you look at futures with players that they have to pay.
Are we sure they don't have this window open next year too?
I'm not sure they have it like this.
Maybe not like this, but because it feels like the real cap pinch is 2 years away.
Well, but they still have to pay after this season. You got to pay Lee McNeil. You're not sure what's going on with Decker. So those are 2 contracts that come up right away.
Yeah. Well, I
And the Lee McNeil is going to be a big one.
I am going to – I'm not impatient. I'm not going to rip anybody. But I feel like the sense of urgency should be there right now to use this money. Now maybe that when I say right now, I don't mean, Monday. I mean this season, use this money. A year ago, I kind of understood why they didn't make a move at the trade deadline. The explanations I got were about fits positionally and fits from making sure that they got the right kind of guy in the locker room. And that's the one thing about taking the money into the season at the trade deadline is You don't get to choose which players become disgruntled with their organizations and become available in trade. You don't get to choose which organizations fade from contention and want to unload players. And you don't, even though if you do get to choose, maybe those teams don't want to unload those players. Like, a lot has to line up for you to take advantage of that at the trade deadline. It also seems to me that the trade deadline deals are the best because you end up giving up draft capital that isn't elite to get elite talent. But it comes with a risk because you just don't know who's going to be available.
Well, exactly.
Last year, the two names that everybody wanted were Montez Sweat and Chase Young. And they were at a position of need, opposite Aiden Hutchinson. But whether it was, again, I don't know which was which or whatever, but I was told it's position. Now, in the case of Montez Sweat, the kind of money he got might have been, the Lions might have inquired, and they said, well, here's the kind of contract I'm looking for. And they were like, well, here's the kind of contract we're going to offer.
Right.
And it might have been, well, this is not a fit. But still, there's a risk in that. With a free agent now, I would be surprised if they don't use some of this money before the season on a free agent and take a healthy bankroll into the season for a trade deadline move.
Yeah, they just have too much money to not go and look at where else can we improve this roster. Now, they're going to have to find the right fit because that's what they're all about. They are entirely about the right players for this culture. And don't know if some of these guys that are out there, if they fit it or not. You know, Quandre Diggs still available. Justin Simmons still available. So I imagine some wide receiver help that could be had. So we'll see what they decide to do. But unlike you, I tend to think that there's a move to be had to even improve this roster more.